And we're live. Hello, everyone. We are back with another exciting workshop. I am Hadia Malik, and I thank you all for being a part of this workshop. Everyone who's joined in from Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, a very, very warm welcome. And we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to hear your comments, suggestions, whatever it is that you'd like to share with us. You can share it in the chat box, and we'll be happy to take it up. And if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer. For everyone who's joining in for the first time, I'd also like to share a bit about the Curious platform. Curious is a platform where we are on a mission to transform 100 million careers by having apprentices get bite sized learning from experienced mentors. And then we put you together with projects where you can apply the learned concepts. Currently on the platform, we have multiple cohorts and workshops. And also, we're coming up with many new exciting learning streams. So, if you're somebody who likes to accelerate their learning journey and who wants to stand out in their professional career, be a part of Curious Tribe and sign up at www.curious.com. Also, join our Slack tribe because that is where the future market leaders are. We also have a stellar mentor community. So start interacting, start building your network, and join the Slack tribe. The link for the Slack tribe will be mentioned in the comment sections below. And click on it and be a part of it. We'd love to welcome you. We'd love to make sure that you have a great time with us. With that, I'd like to talk a little bit about the workshop that we have today. We will be talking about what constitutes a great business idea. And for that, we have with us none other than Mr. Komail Naqvi. A very brief sort of introduction of Komail is that he is a serial entrepreneur with an extensive learning in product development, innovation, and business strategy. He also has expertise in operations, team structuring, and general management. Komail has founded multiple startups and has a major contribution in the startup ecosystem of Pakistan. His first startup, Find My Adventure, which goes by the name of Go Zayan now, was Pakistan's first online travel portal and is now regarded as one of the best startups in Pakistan. Komail understands his responsibility of giving back and is also the founder of the first social enterprise in Pakistan. It goes by the name of Khoj and it aims to promote ecotourism. Currently, Komail is managing director at Gozayan and he wishes to make an impact on the startup ecosystem globally. Komail, thank you so much for being a part of this workshop. It's lovely to have you here. Komail, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
welcome. Welcome to the webinar and thank you for being a part of this.
Hi, Adya. Thank you so much for having me here, and thank you to the Curious team. Delighted to be here, and I think it's my responsibility to share my story and also share what is needed to build a great business, and also I think what are the essentials of a great business idea, as the topic says itself.
Absolutely, absolutely. So
So,
before we,
Hadi, I would essentially like to start with the
Kumail, you're breaking up.
yeah, Hadi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll just start with the first question. Before I start, also, I'd like to share with the participants that you
Yes.
all are free to share their
So
questions in the chat box. We'd be happy to include them, and the session is also going to be recorded, and you'll be able to access it later. So let's just dive right into it. Kumail, we'd love to hear from you how your journey has been, and how you are here where you are today. Kumail, can you hear me?
yeah, can we? Yes, I can now. Can
Okay,
we put the slide on, please?
sure, sure.
Got it. So just want to confirm if I am audible and if you can hear me, Adia.
Yeah, absolutely. I can hear you.
Okay, great. So I just want to start with a story, and this is a story that I personally went through, and this is something that I start off all my sessions with because it's something I believe everyone can connect with. Um, so I back in 2011 I developed this passion for mountaineering and leading expeditions all over the country. And Pakistan is generally very famous for its landscapes and high mountains. So this picture is from one of the expeditions that I was on. And right now, this picture was taken from my camera at around 6,000 meters, which is around 18,000 feet above sea level. Um, and and at this moment, when we were descending back from the summit, I thought to myself, what am I doing with life? Am I doing something constructive about it, or what is all of this? Why do I climb mountains? Yeah, Hadia, am I audible? Because I think there's a connectivity issue.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely audible.
Got it. Got it. So one thing that I developed during this all my time while mountaineering and climbing peaks was something that I think was of the most utmost importance for me, and that was overcoming fear. And that is where whenever I used to venture out and whenever I used to go somewhere, I used to think about something that tells a story. And it connects the story to me as well. That every time I look at this picture, it takes me back to the time when I thought about how I can overcome fears in life, right? So, very important for all of us that we don't set certain limits for ourselves. We don't think that there's a certain limit we can touch and that's it. And nothing is impossible for any human being in the world. So this is something that I always think is basically the point where you start from. Once you think about how you deal with fear, I think that's the main journey you have to cross when you're thinking about establishing a business, thinking about an idea, and also working on an idea. So that is one of my points where I relate to, and I think it is very important for everyone to think of a time, to think of an event where people can think about how it changed their life, how it changed how people thought about how things are done. And that thought process is one of the major parts of your core development in your mindset, where you think about how you will change things in going forward. And as an entrepreneur, I think it's very important that you have an open mind. You think about how you'll overcome fears. You think about how you. So on this ridge, it could either be me falling from the right side of the ridge or me falling from the left side of the ridge. But while I was doing all of this, I was focused on achieving what was important, and which was getting back to ground and experiencing the whole event. So it was not just a hobby; it was learning for me as well. So this is where I generally start my conversations, and I think it's fairly important for people to connect um, to what I've experienced, and everyone should basically have that one event in their life where they could go to Facebook, pick out a picture, and say, "Okay, this is where change started, or this is where I should have thought about something, and this taught me a lesson." So, Hadia, I would like to start from here if we can continue the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Kumail, it was lovely for you to share what was that defining moment for you to start something of your own. We'd also like to see how your career has been so far, and how you've built your professional journey that you've built. Like, I've given a brief sort of an introduction, but we'd like to hear from you as well.
Sure. So, I graduated from one of the top universities in Pakistan. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Just breaking a little bit up.
Okay, got it. Yes. So I graduated from one of the top universities in Pakistan. During all of this time, from 2011 to 2015, while I was studying, I was also venturing out to places like the picture I showed you earlier. Um, and I have a professional degree. I have a bachelor's in economics, which is very unrelated to what I do. Um, and again, we'll touch base on that later. How a degree or how knowledge affects how you operate generally. But again, we'll touch that later in the questions. Um, for me, I think I the first time I started something was back in 2008. One of my very close friends passed away while we were pretty young. I think 14, 15 years of age. I with the family of my departed friend, we started an NGO back then. For to start an education fund for people who would want to pursue education and uh, did not have the money to do it or did not have the privilege to do it. We started back in 2008. Still an active member of it, but not a founding member anymore because I could not give due time to it. Once I was traveling, one of the major things that I saw during my travels was that environmentally we're very unsustainable as human beings, and it's very important for us to think about these things. So I started Khoj, I think back in 2013, while I was still studying. The main purpose again was to take a take a start on ecotourism in the country itself, and that's where Code started. I was very much thoughtful about communities. I was a lot towards social enterprises to begin with, but then I think that is where you build relationships. That is where you think of ideas outside, your domain, and that is where I think my business idea for Find My Adventure came from as well. That I've worked so much for the people, for the communities where I go for tours. Why not work into something that will not only environmentally protect them but also give them some income, so economically protect them as well, and increase their economic conditions as well. Um, so to be very honest, I never thought I would start a business of my own. All of these were passion projects, and I never thought of pursuing anything of this sort once I graduated. So I graduated in 2015. As soon as I graduated, my dream career or my dream was my family's dream, and I think in Pakistan, or in the subcontinent at least, people generally, if they're not from a business background, and if they're ancestrally not business oriented, then people always go into the plain 9 to 5 jobs. And that is where I also went. I joined a bank in Pakistan. I think banking is one of the most was one of the safest industries. So there was only one multinational bank at that time, which was Standard Chartered Bank. I got my way before admission. I got my acceptance letter from there. I was the happiest person in the world. Did not think that I had to do any other effort anymore in life. And I joined the bank, and I was very passionate about it as well. I worked with passion. I had fun. So to also for all the people who are listening in as well, I think for me, um, I won't lie to anyone. It was never about I was never one of those persons who was sick of their job all the time. Thinking about what I have to do. I can't work for someone. I was never like this. But my motivation was probably something bigger. It was that um, the motivation was, if so all of these expeditions, they had taught me that there was no limit to what you can achieve, right? And that was because so in mountaineering, what you do is that you can't go and just start climbing 8,000-meter peaks, the highest peaks in the world. You have to start slow. You start from a 4,000 meter, then once you do that, you go to a 5,000 meter. Once you do that, you go to 6,000 meter, and so on. And that is where we thought that only effort can get you there, right? um, so basically, when I was at the bank, I was one of the top employees there as well. So I worked only for 1 year, but within 6 7 months everyone knew me because of the kind of work I used to do. I was always active. 24 hours, anyone would give me any work, I'll just do it, and happily, even if it was as minute as getting a photocopy done. I never thought about it as, this is not my job. I won't do it. I get paid for something else. That is the kind of attitude, again, touching base upon that as well. I think the kind of attitude that you need for starting a business or just thinking about a business is that, uh, from the smallest of thing to the largest of thing that is attached to your business, you should know each and everything about it, because the way you take ownership of it, no one else will ever do that unless and until you have the right kind of incentivization, obviously. But obviously, you have to lead by example, and that is where what I learned from my managers as well. Um, so one day what happened was that, one of my friends, he came up to me. He was like, you have all the relevant experience in tourism and travel. I have all the relevant experience in, internet and building internet things. Let's do something together. I was like, okay, sure, why not? But before that, it's one of, again, for the South Asian listeners, I think it's very important that you have a lot of community pressure in Pakistan, right? So if you're doing something, almost everyone will have an opinion. um, so I think one of the most important things of, working on an idea, essential is the great comes a lot later, but one of the essentials of working on an idea is that, you should be very confident about what you're doing. And again, it should never be about backup. One should never have a backup, right? Like, okay, I have four ideas. I'll start with one and then I'll end up at four. No, you start at one, you work on one, you give it your full effort. If it fails, that's a part of life, right? So it should never be about, okay, I have four ideas. I'll work. So again, I've divulged a bit from the top, from where I started. A lot of community pressure, and I think the first thing that I had to do was, that I had to convince everyone around me that the idea I am working on is the perfect idea, and it is the idea that will change, the landscape of the tourism industry in Pakistan. Um, so, for example, family pressure was there. Everyone used to say, you've studied from one of the top business schools in Pakistan. Why would you go in tourism? So convincing them that, it's not about what you've studied. It's not about, what is being done in the world. It's about what you're passionate about and what you believe you can do. So I firmly believed that I could make a change in tourism, and the travel industry of the country itself. Um, Secondly, I think when we it's something nowadays everyone knows that, to build something great, you have to have the right people with you. So convincing almost everyone that, travel was something that would change. And to be very honest, Pakistani travel industry back in 2016, not something very cool. There's a fad every year about something being cool. The travel industry was never cool for the country itself, because again, because of multiple issues, the the regions, the geographical politics and everything, plus our own security situation, plus how people thought about Pakistan, all of that, and then how people inside even thought about how travel would be in Pakistan. So it wasn't very easy for me, but again, the essentials. When we talk about an essential of a, I will again drop the grade from it. The essentials of a business idea, wants you. It requires you. It's mandatory that you, once you think about an idea, you should be sure that you are the right person to do it, and you should also be sure that you will not give up on it, because the idea is completely reliant on the person himself or herself, how good that idea can be executed. So just to think about it, passion, knowledge, and the drive that should be there when you talk about establishing a business idea first.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think when you talk about your own personal story, there's a lot of times we're talking about a business idea and how to start with that. So everyone who's joined in, they'd love to know that how to start the ideation process, right? We all have thoughts, we all have business ideas in our mind which we think that can be the next great thing. But how to start that ideation process, just to sort of join everything together and just have like that particular just having that connection with everything, just having that thought. So just if you could share how you had started your ideation process, just to give us an example.
Sure. So one thing that I always share, and now I share it even more, is that the good thing about me sharing this is I've learned from failures. So when we started working on the business, neither the business ecosystem of Pakistan was great, nor was a tech ecosystem developed. Neither did I know anything about starting a business. So I've learned actually from failure. So every day I would fail on something, I would build upon it. And it has taken me 6 years, and I still believe I haven't learned anything. But at least what I've learned is I can share my failures, right? Um, so when we started, the idea was completely about passion. This is what we think about it, and so one day we just sit and we start researching. So again, the first and most utmost important part is the research part, and you need to know, and that research is two. There's a two-way approach on it, two-part approach. One is researching on the business idea itself, and two is researching on yourself if you are the right person for that idea. When I talk about researching on yourself, it means how big of an idea do you want to work on? Is it something you want to make, a multi-billion, multinational business? Are you talking about that, or are you even happy with something that gives you a stable income stream? Because that is also a business, right? So it's important that the person himself or herself first knows how big of an idea are they signing up for. Because the bigger the idea is, the greater the challenge is, right? And the greater the energy they have to spend. Um, Secondly, I think when I talk about researching for us, ideally, I think the only advantage of us starting back in 2016 was that we spent time in the industry and we learned from failures. Um, I still think that it would have been we would have been even bigger if we started in 2020 post the COVID wave, because that was a completely different world that we were living in, right? There was a huge technology boom and everything. But again, I don't discount anything that I've done. But research in the right ways means that is this the right time to think about the idea what I'm working on, or is this the right time to execute that idea that I'm working on? So one of the major parts, and is this the right market as well? Plus, am I doing too many things at once, or do I focus? So research, I think, is the first and foremost thing that people should do. Um, Even before that, just to correct myself, before research comes, what you're passionate about, because you select one idea and then you research, right? So if we even further break down the process, so there's a selection process that so if someone started Curious, I believe they would have first thought about people in the world, they need some kind of leadership, some kind of mentorship to guide them through their successes and failures, and get somewhere, right? So obviously there's a vision that first person has to build, and then the research comes in. After the research, I believe it's and in the research as well, there is one thing that is, and so again, methodology approach is very important as well. So for I generally don't like to talk about very bookish things, but I think it's very important for people to introduce structure to how they think and how they're working from the beginning. So yeah, Hadia, can you hear me?
Sorry,
Yes,
I can hear you.
can you hear
Yeah,
me, Hadia?
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Am I audible? Okay, got it.
Yes.
So structure is very important when you're researching. So for example, the business canvas is the business canvas model is something that we used to use back when we started working on our idea. So what that helped us with was okay, this is our market, this is what we're doing, and then where do we want to go, when do we want to grow, because that if you don't have a structured plan in front of you, I think advantage both, because in the because of that, if it's structured, the path you have to follow. But if it's unstructured, you think every day and you're working on the go. That has its advantages and disadvantages both. Yeah, that has its pros and cons both, because again, when you're working on an idea, you have to be flexible as well. So nothing has to be set in stone that this is only what you will do, but there has to be a Bible that you have to follow. That these are the steps that you got to do, right? So that's very important. I think another thing that is very important for an idea, for the essentials of a great business idea, is knowing your market, right? So, if a market exists, if the market is there, how big is the market? And again, that is also connected with. So again, connecting with example, back when we started, um, we we thought that the Pakistani market alone was big enough. So again, the vision where we started earlier, the vision is, for me, the vision was I will disrupt the travel industry of the country. But the vision also starts from a base, right? Um, the vision was disrupting the Pakistani travel industry, but then it became, why only Pakistan? It should be bigger, right? I'll disrupt a region. Then obviously it becomes even bigger. I'll disrupt two regions. I'll disrupt a continent. I'll disrupt the industry itself. And that is also again an iterative process, right? You can't your overall vision should be bigger. Again, failure was that I thought in a smaller silo, right? So I thought, I'll only disrupt the travel industry in Pakistan. But as I grew and I saw success stories all over the world, when I used to listen to those people, they would always, or at least they would always share that their vision from day one was that they would do something greater for humanity. um, so that is also something that's very important, and that is where, for me, I think when I started thinking about just Pakistan, 5 years down the road, I think now, for me, Pakistan itself is a smaller achievement, and the South Asian industry is a bigger achievement, and Africa, Asia plus Africa is even the bigger achievement, and then a Nasdaq IPO is my goal, right? So that is where I've not only learned myself, but obviously learned through my peers, learned through how the general ecosystem is progressing. One thing that I would really like to share is that, for me, to shift from and this is, I think, the utmost important, and I think without this, I think there is no, um, I would never encourage anyone to even think of an idea if the person cannot, what I'm going to talk about, if the person cannot do it. If you can only think about ideas, and if you cannot execute, and all you do is think about ideas during the day, during the night, repeat 365 days a year, then obviously all the essentials do not matter, because the idea itself, you have to be true to the idea, you have to be honest to the idea. Think about getting married to the idea, that the idea is going to be your life. Okay, so um, the execution matters, I think, the most when you talk about an idea. So I was one of the people who back then used to be, one of those people who used to have ideas all day, all night, but never thought about executing them.
That's all of us. We have like multiple ideas every day, but I say this
Yes,
thing that idea is that person who executes it. The person who's thinking it doesn't.
exactly. So even for me, Hadi, I had a life changing moment. I had a life changing conversation, actually, which bumped some sense into my head. So what happened was that I went for an interview at one of the mobility companies in Pakistan. Kareem, they had recently launched in Pakistan. They were hiring for their core team in the country, and I went for an interview there. And the managing director of Pakistan, he looks into my CV, and he looks up to me, and he has this smile on his face, and he starts laughing, right? So, and he goes like, I think you're crazy, man. And I think I was a bit confused why he's saying that. But then he goes like, you've written all these mountaineering and expeditions, and you love the mountains, you love traveling. Why are you joining a mobility company? It's a startup, that's fine, but why are you joining a mobility company? And I think there he goes like, okay, I think you should start your own travel business, right? So during all of this time when I was giving the interview, I did not disclose to the person that I was working on an idea, and it was just in an ideation phase where I was researching, thinking about building, who will work with me on this idea, how will I execute this. It was just in my mind, nothing on mind and paper, but nothing executable. So he's like, okay, give me a week. I'll convince you that you should start working on it. Leave everything else. So this guy Junaid Iqbal, the managing director at that time, he sets up a coffee meet with the CEO of Kareem, Mudassir Shekha, and we and he didn't tell me that Mudassir is coming, and we're having coffee, and Mudassir comes in, and he's like, Mudassir, these guys, they have a great idea, but they're not working on it. They're not leaving their jobs. So he told me three things, and I think those three things I not only repeat those three things every day in my life, but I also believe that should be the core belief system. That has been the core belief system for my idea and for my business. So one was that never think that no one else is doing the same work or working on the same idea that you are working on. What this would do is this would keep you on your toes, that I need to execute first. Because let's say Hadia is building a travel business right now, and I have to be quicker. I have to execute it, right? The second thing that he said was, never think that the person who's doing the same work is not better than you. That way, again, you'll stay on your toes and you'll do even better. So even if you both are executing and you both are in the market, you have to be better than that guy. Um, the third thing and the most important thing was, no business idea and no business has ever been built part time. And this third one was the one, and he said, if even if you do the first two and you don't do the third one, then forget it, don't do it. You're thinking too small, you won't get anywhere, and your vision's too small. So if only if and only if you're going to do the third one, then follow the first two as well. And I think that changed my core belief system on and I think these are the three essentials that I have always had. Even if I work on another idea, I think these will be the first three things that I work on. um, just to continue on this as well. I know I've spoken a lot on this one question, but I think it covers quite a bit.
Yeah,
But yeah. So another thing that I wanted to share was that um, a lot of people ask that I have an idea, I think I can do it, but that person is already doing it. And is there still space for me to do it? How can I make sure that I can do a better job than that person who's already doing the same idea? So firstly, I think, for again, an essential is um, that you need to have a core belief system, that you believe in yourself, that your execution can be better. And you need to understand from the weaknesses of that business how you can be different, right? So there has to be a differentiating factor in every business idea. No two businesses are entirely the same. So for example, in Pakistan, Kareem and Uber, I use these two companies as an example because, again, at the end of the day, the product is a mobility. Both are solving a mobility issue, right? You book a cab, you sit in it, and you go. But you know, a differentiating factor, right? So, or when you use an Uber, you can't talk to anyone. If you have a complaint, you have to use the app, and people in the country were not, very comfortable with it. They always used to complain on social media, oh, this has happened, even though the app worked perfectly fine. If you would complain, it would get resolved in a matter of minutes. But Kareem, they differentiate themselves by establishing a complete contact and customer center, right? So they saw where Uber lacked, and that is where they came in and said, okay, this is how we'll solve the problem. So in every idea, it's very important that you figure out a differentiating factor, if people already exist in that market, if someone is already existing in the market. Another very important part is, if you're working on an idea and you think no one is working on it, that is something very dangerous. If no one else is working on it, you need to think, is it because, you know, no one else has the capacity to execute it? But that is not possible if we believe in those 3 points that I mentioned, right? If no one else is doing it, then there's certainly a problem with that idea. Or, you know, if there's certainly a problem or a challenge executing it. If you firmly believe, you know, then your research has to be, why has no one ever done it? And I don't think it is possible that, you know, if you're thinking of an idea, no one else would ever think about it. I firmly believe that at one time millions of people are probably thinking about the same idea. Just as an example, yesterday, one of my colleagues, he was sitting right next to me, he was like, I'm thinking of starting a startup that does X. For reasons of confidentiality, I am not sharing the idea again. And I was like, um, just yesterday, I saw a pitch deck doing the same thing. And he was like, can't be possible. I just thought about it yesterday. And I showed him the pitch deck. He was like, how can they take my idea when I just thought about it yesterday? So I'm like, everyone is thinking about ideas. It's about who executes first. So I told my colleague, man, if you thought about it, you should have thought about how you're going to execute it. But them being in the market doesn't mean that you can't do it. You have to establish a differentiating factor. Um, so yeah,
Great, great. And I like how you've mentioned in detail how to, have that ideation phase and what things to keep in mind and what not to keep in mind. So, we'd also like to know, okay, when you have an idea and you're going towards executing it, what are the challenges that you face, and how do you
sure.
sort of go towards answering those challenges, right, and mitigating them, and then sort of going ahead and starting your own idea, like execute in its execution.
Sure. So again, the challenges that are involved when you're not only working on a business but also executing it are of multiple types. One is, and again, to break it down, one is the challenge of the business. Second is the challenge of the person who is thinking about the idea, who's thinking about starting the business or executing the business. So in my case, I would say the challenges of the travel industry, and then the challenges of overcoming my personality traits, right? So um, am I patient enough to execute a business? Do I have the mental capacity to establish a great business? Do I have the vision to to build a business? um, do I have the psychological, the kind of psychological level? So for example, I tell everyone that um, being in a startup and being an entrepreneur, it's like a sine curve. So one day you will be actually on the peak, and you will be like, I am on top of the world, and I can do anything. And the very next minute, not even on the next day, on the very next minute, you could be at the lowest point in your life. And that lowest point in your life, it's actually a matter of, I would say it's a matter of not minutes but hours, I would say. If you think too much about it, you won't continue. You will say that, I am much better off being psychologically better, and not being in this. So I think first and foremost in this, there are two types of challenges. One is the challenge of the entrepreneur, and then is the challenge of the business, right? So the challenge of the entrepreneur needs to be solved first, but it's not something that you can solve at once. It's something that you learn over time, because again, challenges also become even greater as you move forward, right? So um, and I think I learned about, not I not learned, but I understood about all of this when uh, I was one of the first few people who were chosen by the Alibaba Foundation, Alibaba University, back in 2018, to basically attend a fellowship with the great Jack Ma, a 14-day fellowship course. A total of 40 people, attended this fellowship from all over Southeast Asia, South Asia, and MENA, and UAE. And I was one of the four Pakistanis that went. And when we heard from the great leaders of Alibaba, and we heard from Jack Ma, and when we learned that his challenges were very similar to what we face every day in life, we were like, it's not actually impossible to build something as great and as unbelievable as Alibaba, right? So, and that is where we started to understand as well that everyone goes through this. And yes, I do go through a low time. I do go through a high time. But if someone like Jack Ma can go through it and get through it, then we just have to be. Then we just have to develop a personality, like him and others in the market, right? There
And
are
also,
a lot of industry leaders. Yeah.
and also when you
Sorry.
overcome all those obstacles and you become somebody like Jack Ma, I think this gives you a lot of motivation to sort of work
Yes.
towards, mitigating every obstacle that you face.
Yes, agreed. So first thing I think was is the personality challenge that you have to overcome, um, and second is obviously the business challenge, right? So what is the industry challenge like? So for example, for us, we were working on a tech product when the tech ecosystem did not exist. We were working in a startup space when the startup ecosystem did not exist in Pakistan. And so globally, yes, it did, but it came later in Pakistan. So for us, the challenge was, and then convincing convincing the people in the community that this is something that we want to do and we want to work in. So that was another challenge. But I think the industry challenges. So, for example, what we did. Um, I started with six partners, right? So in Find My Adventure, there were a total of six people who were the founders. And as time passed, I was the only one left. And the only reason I think I give credit to that was either I'm extremely stupid or I'm extremely patient. So I think my belief was, and again sticking to the idea again, like I mentioned, you have to believe in it. From day one, I thought if someone can do it, that would be me, and that will only be done if I put in the right kind of effort. And I if I leave it midway, it would not be fair to the idea itself, and it would not be fair to the people who believed in this with me, who believed in me that you can do it, man. Um, so um, I could have left at any point. The startup ecosystem does not exist. Okay, let's not do it. The tech ecosystem did not exist. Okay, let's not do it. People don't want to put in money. Okay, let's not do it. COVID is here. Okay, everything is finished. Let's not do it. Um, no, nothing mattered for me. I think it was very important. And during all of this time, I think what we worked the most on, even back in 2021, I think 2021 was probably one of the best years for us in terms of business and in terms of how everything was going. But once our major growth was building and everything was happening, I sat down with one of my new partners. I brought in a new partner. I sat down with him, and I'm like, okay, I think we were a complete failure this year. Let's restart. Let's do whatever we've done this year. Let's not do it again next year. Because I think, and then we made a list of things that we did, and we got to know that we did so much without doing anything right. Um, and that is again when a lot of opportunities also start to come to us. And yeah, we then later got acquired. We are also one of the first. We are the first travel business in Pakistan to get acquired by a global company. But we're also one of the first startups as well in Pakistan to get acquired by another company outside of Pakistan, and now have a regional scope as well. So I think at any time, if I would have given up on any challenge, or my team would have given up on any challenge, we would not have been fair to the idea itself, or we would not be true to the vision that we always believed in. Um, Plus, I think it's very important as well to be very true to what you're doing. It's not exactly about me being completely blinded by my idea. It's about always questioning yourself as well. That the idea can be great, but how can I improve it every day? How can I be how can I add more value to it? I think that's very important as well.
Absolutely. And before like we start the last leg of the workshop, I'd also like to mention again that we're welcome to answer any questions or the comments or suggestions that you guys have to share. I see a lot of comments coming up. We have Abchandra saying hi to Kumail, you and me. Shakila saying great failures are greater experience in order to impart lessons. So thank you so much for sharing your comments, guys. We'd love to hear your questions if you'd like to share any questions with Kumail. Kumail, you also mentioned about the challenges when we were talking about the challenges. You said that there are challenges that an entrepreneur faces. So I'd also like to
Yeah.
know what you think are the personality traits that an entrepreneur or an executor needs to have in order to make sure that their idea goes from ideation phase to the execution
Yeah.
phase.
So I think this is something I love talking about. I can talk another hour on this. Um, so number one is, I think, the most important one I always believe is fear. Um, and my question to everyone always is that, why is anyone afraid of anything? Why is anyone scared of anything? uh, because there is actually no reason why people are scared. People are afraid of something, or people are scared of something. The only reason that they come up with is that they don't know what is on the other side of it. They don't know what results will come out of it. And that is where I think, that is where I think that I work on it. So for me, fear was sitting on that ridge at 6,000 meters above sea level, and not thinking about overcoming fear, and not thinking about falling either in the crevasse on the left or the crevasse on the right. It was about, how about I not fall into it. And even if I fall into it, I can't do anything about it, right? So the only thing I can do about it is I stay focused, and I climb down with complete focus. Um, so for example, in my experience, every time I used to be scared of something, it was something that, so just to put it into another theoretical example, would be, if once you do something, there is a response that will come in, right? So for every question there's an answer, for every input there's an output. um, and you just need to think about the possibilities that will come up to you once you take a certain action or do a certain thing, right? And once you have that possibilities, you really have to be realistic and think that, these are the only possibilities, and there is nothing I can do about them except for choosing which is the best one. And when you know that, you have to choose one of those options, only then do you overcome fear. Because again, then you're like, so when even when so writing an email, right? So I'm writing an email and I'm thinking about, okay, if I write this to, for example, just to make it a tough one, i'm I'm leaving the business, right? Or I'm dissociating myself with one of my favorite colleagues. Um, so if I'm writing that email, first I'll think a lot about it. If I have that fear factor, I'll think about a lot about it. How do I avoid it? How can I not do it? Can someone else do it? But if you come to think about it, just think about what the possibilities are, right? Maximum would be that, that person would not like you for the rest of their life. Minimum would be that that person understands and says, okay, there was a reason behind it. So what you can do is, if you have the possible outcomes in your mind, then you're not fearful about doing anything. So it's very important for people to know every action will have a reaction, and those reactions have to be very carefully choose from. So you can't actually go like, okay, I won't do it, because you have to. So for me, I think that is one of the most important point. I always tell people, you have to make a decision, because either it's A or B. Even if it's A, then that leads to A or B. So there's a never ending sequence, but there is a sequence. If you know that sequence, just be ready for it. Don't be scared about it. um, the other one I would just like to add is obviously patience. I think without patience, there is nothing can be done. And if you are someone who is not patient, I would suggest that, even if you're not patient, you'll have the fear element anyhow. So if you have to develop a personality where you're very patient, you are calm, you think about things, and you don't take things lightly, but you wait for things to figure out things, and you work yourself through the process of solving things as well.
Yeah, and also somebody who's not demotivated very easily.
Yes, that's very important.
Great. Before we move forward with one of the last questions, I'd like to include a question. We have Joanna who's asking, "Hi Kumail, what is the role of research in analyzing a great business idea?"
Great. So I think research, again, as I mentioned, is the primary part after deciding what the idea is, right? And the role is majorly your execution is mainly dependent on research, right? So if you don't know the market that exists, or if you don't know the supplier that exists, or if you don't know who are you selling to, or if you don't know what are you working on, and how many people are working on it, you actually are working in a silo that is very different from what the world is doing. So you have to be if you, so for example, for me, if I'm in travel, I should know each and everything about happening in travel in the world. I should be up to date. I should know who has done the same thing that I have done before, how they did it, how they failed, how they succeeded, who are the people who work with them. Talk to those people. Talk to people who've done this before. LinkedIn is an amazing tool. I go up to people. I message people on LinkedIn who are CEOs of unicorns, and they get back to me. Even if they get back to me after a year, they do get back to me. And no question is stupid, right? So when you're working on a great business idea, when you're working on something, I think one thing that you always have to do is ask stupid questions. When you ask stupid questions, and if the other person has gone through the same journey, they will never be disrespectful. They will actually add value, and they will understand that you are researching from the from ground zero, right? So that's very important. So I think the role of research, when we talk about practicality, I think it's the most important part after the execution, but the execution also depends on research. So it's all interconnected, but I think a very very major role in the overall in the overall cycle.
Absolutely. So since we're right about to end the webinar, I would really like to know, Kumail, that what is your take on mentoring? And since you mentioned that you've been reaching out to the your CEOs of unicorns and just to ask them for guidance, and you're also saying that no question is stupid. So I'd really like to know your take on mentoring, and I'd also like to know who your mentor is and what's the best advice that they've shared with you that's still stuck with you so far. And you can't use the one that
Sure.
you've recently used. Some other we'd like to hear from.
Sure. So for me, I think um, now that I've finally achieved a bit. I wouldn't say that I've done something great till now. I still have much more greater things to do in life, inshallah. Uh, I think um, it's so a lot of people, they and senior people who are already in have already either retired or are in the phase of life where they can't connect with the current generation. They've called me up and they've asked me to help people and make share my learnings with others. So I what I so again very honestly, I one thing that I don't like is if you haven't been through it, you can't share it with others. And my goal is very clear that whatever I've been through in the 6 years, everyone around me should know about it so that they don't make the same mistake. So on mentoring, I think it's an extremely important thing. I did not have the right kind of people around me, and if I did, I would not have gone through. Let's say if I've gone through a thousand failures, it might have been 500, but that 500 might have been a lot easier for me. So obviously, connecting with the right people, having the right mentors, it is extremely important to have the right mentors. Right, being the keyword here, Um because now there are two kind of mentors. Right, one is the kind of mentor that grooms your personality, that has already been through a phase of life that they can connect with you and understand that what kind of personality traits they had, and they can build in you. The other is a professional mentor. For example, for me, if I'm in the travel industry, it is better for me to have people in the travel industry giving me advice. And obviously, when no advice, can 100% be incorporated in your own self, you have to build on that advice, because everyone's experiences in life are different. No two people can have the same experience. Even if they do, your approach can be a bit different to it. So it's about absorbing all of it and acting on what you think can be done from your end on it. So I am a strong supporter of mentoring, because again, for me, the first case of mentoring was again that interview and that coffee meet. And the second, I would say the best mentoring session for me was the fellowship. 14 days were spent only on, how we should think. um, and that is something people don't think about. People are from day one, execution is obviously the prime thing that you need to do. But before execution, you need to be so clear in your mind that people don't talk about, at least in Pakistan, right? So that's what I think about. So again, to name a few people again who have been, good mentors. I think one of the first ones was um, I have I have very few people who I take mentorship from. But from my industry, it has been, for example, the Prime Minister of Pakistan has been a great mentor to me. Not directly, but has been a sense of motivation. I've always been motivated with what he says. Um, then again, there are a few people in Pakistan who've achieved greater heights. So, for example, there's Mr. Shaheen, who's leading one of the world's largest travel distribution companies as well. Um, so, to name a few, yes. I think it would be unfair if I name a few and not everyone. So,
Yeah.
uh, yes, but professional mentors and personality mentors, I think these should be two separate. And then don't uh, don't take advice from everyone. Take advice from people who not only value you, but you also value them and their input, and you can connect to them. That is very important.
Absolutely, absolutely. And since we're just right on time, I'd just like to ask you one last question, Kumail. We'd love to know, because a lot of people who are joining in, there's somebody who's just recently graduated, or somebody who's just started their career, and they're also thinking of starting their own thing, and they're sort of torn between working for a corporate or just starting their own thing. So, what is that one advice that you would like to give them based on your experience and how your career has been so far? What is that one thing that you'd like to share with them?
Sure. One thing I think is very important is, and that's something again I believe, I don't think it can apply to everyone. It's very important to work in a structured environment for a few months or years. Uh, so because it's very important. So what I've seen now is that when people graduate out of college and universities, they're very unstructured because of the way our education is. It's unstructured in ways. Everyone is different in discipline. Everyone has different ways of working. But when you work in a structured environment, and that even that upfront, that helps you structure a lot of your thoughts. That helps you structure the way you work. So I think that is very important for people who graduate, and are looking to join, if not a startup, if a corporate, if the corporate sector. I think they should just go there to learn how things work, because that though they have been working for centuries, right? Their working has been going for a while. And if you're someone who does not like to be bound by certain ways of working, but you have a lot of energy and you have the power to channel it, then obviously go for places where you're not part of a bigger team. You're someone who's very important, and you're someone who can make a difference. But again, everyone should also understand that um having that ego or that attitude where you always want to be the front runner, that is not possible. There is, again, like I said, 4,000 meters, 5,000 meters, 6,000 meters. So that is there. If you go from 6,000 to 8,000, you'll be in the hospital for sure. There is no doubt about that. So you don't want frostbite. You want to make sure that you are ready for it, because again, your professional life is not for only 3, 4, 5 years. It is something that you have to do for the rest of your life after you've graduated. So also very important for everyone to enjoy the time while they're studying.
Absolutely, absolutely. Kumail, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. We are right on time. If I've missed out on any question, I apologize for that, but we're just running short on time. I'd like to thank everybody who's joined in. We've Adil who's sharing his comments. Anam is saying this was a great session. She's thanking you, Kumail. We have Anik who showed in. Shakila is also sharing, saying thank you. We have Mr. Wimal who's also joined in. So thank you so much, guys, for joining in. We had a lovely session, and also like to mention that we have more of many such interesting workshops coming up. And if you're a mentor or an apprentice or a just visit www.curios.com, and we have something for everybody there. And Kumail, I'd also like to thank you for being a part of this workshop.
Thank
We had a
you.
lot from learn from you. Thank you so much, and we'll make sure that you're doing more of these sessions on our platform. It was a great experience.
Thank you, Hadia. Thank you, Curious. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.